So I'm going to lead off today with a question. Is it a legitimate role of government to ban products? To tell us what we can and cannot have? That's the question. So, I just received this shipment, and I guess most of you have heard the recent news about incandescent light bulbs. This is a battle that's been going on for a long time, for quite a few years, and I remember when they first started it, and I reacted to it by purchasing the products I wanted right from the beginning, and that is incandescent light bulbs. Now these are appliance bulbs, so they're small, but the base is the standard A base, so they screw into a standard light fixture. And these have a brass base, so they're pretty decent quality. They are, a lot of them have an aluminum base, and the aluminum base has more of a problem. But anyway, so I just bought quite a few of these because of the recent ruling, and I went online at some of the sellers I've bought from in the past, and most of them are out of incandescent light bulbs. And I think a lot of people didn't even notice. You know, the people who buy their light bulbs at Walmart, I mean, early on they didn't really notice, because Walmart just transitioned to selling halogen bulbs that look the same as the incandescent bulbs, and so people just bought those and pretty much thought they were getting the same thing, but they weren't. So these are, like I said, they're appliance bulbs, but they work just fine. They're rated at 130 volts. I tried to buy 130 volt rated ones because they last longer. And on the side, it gives you the facts of this bulb, and it breaks it down to at 130 volts and at 120 volts. So the life of it, based on 3 hours per day, would be 2.3 years at 130 volts, or 4.6 years at 120 volts. So that's a long-lasting bulb. It's 40 watts at 130 volts, 36 watts at 120 volts. So it'll run cooler, produce a little bit less light, 290 lumens at 130 volts, or 217 at 120. So produce a little less light, use a little less energy, and last twice as long. You know, a few years ago, several years ago, I had started transitioning largely to CFLs. That's the compact fluorescent bulbs that screw into a standard fixture. And I was still using some incandescent bulbs, and I was using some of the CFLs. And I noticed that anytime I was running on generator power, the CFLs used a lot more power, and they got really hot. And so I determined from that if I'm going to run something on generator power a lot, I'm better off using incandescent. And so several years ago, though, I was using some of the CFLs, and specifically I had one in the laundry room, and it exploded. It was not running on generator power, it was running on just line power. And it exploded and set the house on fire. And I was able to put it out, but the laundry room was attached to the house, but it was a house that it had a carport that shared a roof of the main house. And so basically like an attached garage, but without the walls. It only had 2 walls. And on the back of that carport was a laundry room. And that's where the fire started. And because it shared a roof with the main house, and the fire got up into the attic, and it was about to have the entire house on fire. But I was able to put it out before it got to the main house. And at that point I decided no more CFLs for me. And then they came out with the LED light bulbs that started replacing those. And I think LED light bulbs are probably maybe safer than the CFLs, probably safer than the CFLs, but they're still made using semiconductors. And semiconductors, and I think, you know, just about all of them are probably made in China. And being in the electronics field for years, I know that Chinese semiconductors can be problematic. Not necessarily, but some of them are. And failure mode of a semiconductor is the opposite of metals. So, you know, fuses, for example, are made of metal, because what happens with a metal is as the current goes up, it gets hotter. That's true of anything. More current means more heat. And with a metal, when it gets hotter, the resistance goes up. So it resists the current. And the way a fuse is made is it's got a smaller section of conductor, so it gets really hot and melts the metal and stops the current. Now a semiconductor behaves the opposite of that. The hotter it gets, the more it conducts. So you have a thermal runaway. And that's how you get fires from semiconductors. And they'll eventually go pop and do the same thing as a fuse, but it's uncontrolled. And when it does that, it can start fires. And it might start a fire before it even, you know, completely fails in the open condition, because a lot of times it'll fail in the conducting position or condition. So anyway, enough of that. Bottom line is that lights that require semiconductors to work, I don't fully 100% trust. An incandescent bulb is a fuse. If it gets too hot, it burns out and stops conducting. That's how a light bulb fails, and it's designed to do that eventually. So it's not a problem. It doesn't set things on fire. The modern light bulbs that the government is trying to force everybody to use now, they don't necessarily fail that way. In fact, they claim that they last, you know, practically forever. And what that means is they're not designed to have a failure mode that is safe, because they're not designed to fail. So when they do fail, they might start a fire as they fail. And so that was my experience. And LEDs, of course, are light emitting diode. That is a semiconductor, and it has other semiconductors in it too. And because you can make an LED light that the LED itself is the only semiconductor, and it just has a resistor to drop the current so that it doesn't immediately flash But that's very inefficient, because that means that an LED that draws, say, 30 milliamps at 3 volts and produces a certain amount of light will also draw 30 milliamps at 120 volts and produce the same amount of light. You don't think that's wasteful? It is. So what they do is they use electronics to probably, I haven't dissected one, but they probably use a switch mode voltage regulator to drop the voltage to the LED, because LEDs don't use 120 volts. So anyway, enough about that. Bottom line is, I don't want all my light bulbs to have semiconductors in them. These don't. So regardless of what they tell you, you know, new and improved is not a scientific fact. It's just a marketing slogan. So when you got new and improved marketing combined with a government that's trying to force you to accept the new technology, I tend to balk a little bit, especially if I look at it and analyze the technology, and I'm still not convinced. So, I do use some LEDs, but I still use some incandescents too. And you might want to look into getting some. Thanks for watching.